I love you.
What is going on, everybody? This is Mike Hughes, and you're listening to Mike on the Mic, a.k.a. The Shy Kid, everything Chicago sports-related podcast. Man, we're back. We're better than ever. We got some news this morning. It was icy. It was rainy. It was not a beautiful day. It's not a beautiful start to the day whatsoever. But we got some news. At around 7 a.m., it was broke by ESPN 1000 that the Chicago Bears have finally answered the long-awaited offensive coordinating question. Who is going to be the offensive coordinator of 2024? And Ryan Poles has assigned Shane Waldron with that position, the former offensive coordinator from 2021 to now from the Seattle Seahawks organization. Absolutely love this hire. We're going to get into everything and more about who Shane Waldron is and how this is going to affect the Chicago Bears organization moving forward. But if you haven't already, hit that follow button if you're following us on Instagram or TikTok at theshy.kid. We're always creating Chicago Bears and Chicago sports content in general. But I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's start off with who Shane Waldron is, because this is a really important question that I feel like obviously led to Ryan Poles wanting to bring him into the organization. Now, we've seen the Bears time and time again bring in first-time offensive coordinators, guys who have been obviously quarterback coaches, wide receiver coaches, tight end coaches, offensive line coaches, maybe even pass game coordinators. That's fine, but never a solidified offensive coordinator who's actually respected at his job. Bill Lazor, not too respected, but nonetheless, when you look at a guy like Shane Waldron, his resume speaks volumes. Let's get into a little bit about who Shane Waldron is. He started off as a graduate assistant at Notre Dame from 2005 to 2007 until he got his shot in the NFL with the New England Patriots in their championship dynasty years. He went from several different positions as the offensive quality control coach in 2008 to a tight ends coach in 2009. After that, he went back and played some college or some high school ball with some college ball mixed into it as an offensive coordinator and as a tight ends coach. So it'll be interesting to see what potentially happens with that and why there was that gap. You know, like why there was a gap from NFL to going back to collegiate to high school level football. But it's okay because in 2016, he comes back. He makes a return as the offensive quality control coach with the Washington Redskins in 2016. And this is where the resume starts to really build. Obviously, the Belichick stuff is very validified in its own regard, but this is where he really starts to become into his own. From 2017 to 2020, he was with Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams, obviously having that Super Bowl appearance in 2018. He had several different roles with the Rams, from tight end coach, passing game coordinator, to quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator from 2019 to 2020. So, you know, learning under Sean McVay was obviously very important in the decision for Ryan Poles. He obviously wanted to bring in somebody who has been under a legitimate offensive scheme, a legitimate offensive production. I love it. I love it. Either Kyle Shanahan or you look at a Sean McVay. Those are perfect guys to go look at and say, hey, listen, we are getting somebody who has learned under them. He's learned under Belichick. He's learned under Sean McVay. And that's not where it ends. From 2021 on, he is the passing game coordinator and the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks organization. So that's so important to me, not only just because of Pete Carroll's name and the legend of Pete Carroll as an offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks organization, but understanding what he was able to do. It wasn't Pete Carroll that rejuvenated the career of an older Geno Smith. Geno Smith not only becomes comeback player of the year, but also goes to the Pro Bowl. You know, you have those conversations about how productive he's been. So to have that happen and to have him have multitudes of quarterbacks from Jared Goff to Tom Brady to a I can't even tell you who the quarterback was of the Washington Redskins in 2016. Somebody help me out in the comments. I have no idea. But then to go to a Russell Wilson, to a Geno Smith, those are totally different play styles and totally different minds, and honestly, just totally different personalities. So, you can see that he can maintain that and he can handle that. So I love that we've seen that from a Shane Waldron thus far. It's going to be really interesting to see what potentially happens with a Justin Fields. I think one of the biggest things right now, a lot of fans are questioning why Greg Roman wasn't hired, the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens from 2019 to 2022. Obviously, 2019 being Lamar Jackson's MVP season. I want to point that out because I think it's important. A lot of people say, okay, but the second Greg Roman left, Lamar had an MVP season. But I also want to put into that conversation, where people say, oh, Greg Roman didn't have a lot of, passing plays for Lamar. You also have to look at what he had. Hollywood Brown, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is elite. Don't get it twisted, an X factor. But Hollywood Brown with the Ravens was, dropping passes left and right, or drafting receptions left and right. And then you look at Rashad Bateman, who hasn't come into his own. It wasn't until Odell Beckham Jr. and Ty Flowers, along with Mark Andrews, came into the fold to where you really saw Lamar rejuvenate that MVP status. So not to say, that takes anything away from Lamar Jackson, but now that he has legitimate weapons, you can see how talented he is. That was not the fault of Greg Roman. That's more of an organization standpoint, a general manager standpoint. So I still think Greg Roman would have been a great hire, but I will say this. I've only seen Greg Roman at the NFL level with the Ravens with a Lamar Jackson-esque player. You've seen Shane Waldron with a Geno Smith, with a Jared Goff, with a Tom Brady, with a Russell Wilson, pardon me. You've seen him with a multitude of different quarterbacks, whether pocket passers or mobile quarterbacks. So I love that. I love that. There's a mix. There's a quantity there that you can say, okay, he's had success at several different levels. And I think that's one of the more important things right there. So, I think at the end of the day, the way you have to look at it as a Bears fan is just be grateful. I hate to say that, but just be grateful. I talked about it earlier in the beginning of this pod. What was so important for me was a guy who isn't a first-time offensive coordinator. We have hired time and time again since 2000. We have hired time and time again a first-time offensive coordinator, whether that's a linebacker coach, a quarterbacks coach, an offensive lineman coach, tight ends coach, wide receivers coach, et cetera, et cetera. I can't do it. I can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we need solidified offensive coordinators, especially if your head coach is a defensive-minded guy. It matters. It's important. We've seen how it's fucked us up before. Look at a guy like Lovie Smith, over 8 offensive coordinators in his career. Jay Cutler had 8 offensive coordinators in a span of 6 years because Lovie Smith couldn't find the right one, and he had altercations with him. It was a whole thing. There's no shot at Lovie. It's not Lovie's job. You have to oversee that as the general manager and the ownership, and say you need to bring in somebody who knows what they're doing. Point blank, period. Like, there's no other way around that. So I love the hire. I was on my way to work today, and I just kept thinking about it, and I was like, this was the first guy we interviewed. This was the first guy we had legitimate conversations with about being the offensive coordinator. And we went through the Cliff Kingsbury talk. We went through the Greg Roman talks. We went through all these different conversations. But I think, at the end of the day, you go with the first guy you interviewed because that's the guy you want. We talked about Cliff Kingsbury. We talked about what that meant for the team and the organization. I see that more as them trying to find out about who Caleb Williams is as a person. That's likely what that was. And we heard last night that Kellen Moore was going to be interviewed by the Chicago Bears. He's currently the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers, but the Chargers said no. Chargers said, no way, no way. They said they want to interview him for the head coaching job, and they blocked the Chicago Bears from even being able to bring him in. So that's understandable. You know what I mean? Kellen Moore is a very respected and thought-out offensive coordinator. I thought he was going to be a head coach by now. For what he did in Dallas and obviously what he was able to do with the Los Angeles Chargers. But, at the end of the day, I think he will probably likely be the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers if Jim Harbaugh doesn't accept that job, which we know he might not. He's interviewed with several different teams. But it's interesting. It's interesting for sure. And I love this. And the thing for me, and like I mentioned earlier, when you talk about Justin Fields, you maybe bring in a Cliff Kingsbury. That's not a positive for Justin Fields. That screams that you could potentially go after Caleb Williams because they have the connection of working together this past season at USC, as obviously the quarterback's coach and offensive analyst, I believe it was, for Cliff Kingsbury, with Caleb Williams. So, with that, Greg Roman would have told the tale of, okay, well, obviously he worked with Lamar, so we're going to see him work with Justin Fields. And then Cliff Kingsbury is obviously we're going to work with a guy like Caleb Williams. So now you have Shane, who's worked with Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, Tom Brady, Geno Smith, so many different style quarterbacks. You can't tell the hand of Ryan Poles right now. You really couldn't. Based off of Shane Waldron, you really couldn't. So I love that. I think that's great. And I'm really excited about it. I did hear a couple people talk about, oh, he's a little heavy in the screen pass game. He's kind of in big moments. It's been very questionable. But you also have to look at he's being foreseen by a guy like Pete Carroll, who has made questionable decisions throughout his entire career. One of the biggest ones being not running the ball on the 1 yard line in the fucking Super Bowl to lose the game, to the New England Patriots. That's one of the biggest ones. So, yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting. I think this is gonna be a great time for Bears fans. And listen, here's the reality, and this is where I go from professional to unprofessional. This is the Bears fan in me talking. Like I said, even if he is shit and he is a horrible coordinator for the Bears, even if, let's say he is, let's say we don't win a single game, at least he was qualified for the job. At least he was qualified for the position. At least he was somebody that you look at. If you look at everything he went through on paper, in the NFL, in college, at the collegiate level, wherever, he is one of the more respected guys available. So the fact that you didn't go after another Luke Getsy guy who literally just held Aaron Rodgers' jockstrap in Green Bay, like, it matters. It truly does matter. And somebody even said in the comments, two-time champ, obviously working with the New England Patriots for the time that he did. You look at a guy who has been to a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams in 2018. They didn't win that Super Bowl, but they were there. You know what I mean? And you have to acknowledge that. You have to understand that. And you have to sit here and say, listen, this is a guy who has been around championship caliber coaching. This is a guy who has been a part of prestigious organizations. You have to respect it. So I think it's going to be fun, man. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it should be something that Bears fans are very optimistic about. Whether it's Caleb Williams, whether it's Justin Fields, I'm still under the impression that it's going to be Justin Fields. There's not a doubt in my mind that Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears in the foreseeable future. It just makes too much sense. It really does. I understand the conversations about potentially getting a first-round draft pick from him. But my guy Ramirez is in the comments right here, obviously on our live. We need to keep JF because we will know that quarterback they want to get wouldn't take a hit like JF. And that's really a conversation that we've talked about many times on this pod and just with others as well. Watching Justin Fields go to war for these guys, even after only having 3 wins in a season, it's astonishing. It's honestly, there's so much respect from man to man, person to person, about that drive that he has, willing to put the team on his back. Remember the second half of 2022, this guy is averaging 30 points per game as an offense, rushing over 1,000 yards in a single season, with Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle, and Chase Claypool as your receivers, and Velus Jones. Like, what are we talking about? And then, obviously, 2023, Darnell Mooney's having issues. Tyler Scott's having issues. The only real solidified offense that you have is DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. And Khalil Herbert, of course, not going to discredit Khalil Herbert in that second half. What a phenomenal year. Which I feel like Khalil always has a great second half, but it's the first half that starts off kind of slow. But I think with a guy like Shane Waldron, you've seen DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, how they've used the run game with a guy like Kenneth Walker. And the more important thing here, and maybe Shane's a part of that, maybe he's not, but I've noticed it. The Seattle Seahawks organization has done a hell of a job addressing the offensive tackles on their team, creating and developing guys out of nothing. So to see that, okay, we have Braxton Jones who needs a little bit of work, but you can see he's polished. He's slowly getting better. It's just, the false starts and the holding penalties are killing him. So if you can work on that, you already have a Darnell Wright who was your top 10 pick last year. Absolutely phenomenal rookie year. And then you tap into it and see Tevin Jenkins had a Pro Bowl year. If he finished the year healthy, I think he's a Pro Bowl alternate. And then obviously Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair, when we need to address. Nate Davis' case is still open, I believe. Jury's still open on that just because it was his first year. He had a lot of family things going on in OTAs and preseason, and I will never hold that on anybody. You have family stuff going on, always handle your business. That comes first and foremost. I give no fuck about the game of football when it comes to your mama, when it comes to your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, whoever it is. It's important, and we need to address that. So I address that. You know what I mean? Like, I was very vocal on, where's Nate Davis? Where is he? What is he doing? Why isn't he here? Once you find out it's for personal matters and for family issues, okay, leave him alone. You know what I mean? Like, that's point blank period. So I'm excited to see this offensive line going into 2024. You bring in a couple new cats. You still have guys we just named: Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Darnell Wright, Nate Davis. You got some dogs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My guy Rob Scott's in the comments. What's going on, baby? My boy Rob Scott at Rob's 2 Cents does amazing things over there, man. Rob says this might not be bad. Look at Geno's rise from the ashes, 100%. And Rob is so vocal about the New England Patriots organization. For him to work under Bill Belichick and Sean McVay, it speaks volumes. Now, the stint in Washington with the Redskins, I couldn't even tell you who was the head coach in 2016 of the Redskins. Yeah, I don't think it was Ron. I think Ron Rivera got hired in 2017, 2018, something like that. But yeah, man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And then obviously I see a couple of the comments in here we're just going to address before we get out of here. Why hasn't Ryan Poles cut Velus Jones Jr.? Because he's a Tennessee Volunteer, baby. GBO, go Big Orange. No, I'm playing. I think when you draft somebody in the 3rd round, you want to give them every opportunity to succeed. It really comes down to that. You know what I mean? Like, I know how personal it was for him losing Chase Claypool and how hard he took that, because he didn't want the Bears to look dumb. He didn't want to give up a 2nd-round pick for nothing. You know what I mean? 1 touchdown and 0 wins over 10 games. Like, that's crazy. But that really is hard to give up on a guy like that. And Velus is one hell of a talent. I will say that. Velus is a hell of a talent. The problem with Velus Jones is NFL ready type of caliber, I guess you could say, the type of caliber, the type of mold that he is. He's a gadget guy, and gadget guys in the collegiate level are always going to succeed, but in the NFL level, you really need to be in the right system to succeed. So I think you're going to see him in a lot of RPOs, in a lot of play actions, a lot of sweep motions. I think that's really where he fits best. Not to say he's going to be a running back, but, it's, you could kind of put him in that mobile wide receiver kind of position, running wide receiver kind of a Deebo Samuel, but not as, elite as Deebo Samuel. Obviously, I'm making no comparison to the two, but, the role. You could definitely see something like that. Maybe what was his name? A John Ross type role that he had in Cincinnati. So it'll be fun, man. It'll be fun to see what happens with this Bears organization. Justin Fields, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, hopefully Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll see what happens with all of that, man. And if you can pair up, we've talked about it before, the arrival of Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State. This isn't the first time Shane Waldron would have one of the best wide receivers in the draft class coming here from Ohio State. And bringing in Marvin Harrison Jr. to pair him up with DJ Moore, with Cole Kmet, would be absolutely lethal. If Tyler Scott could potentially just hold on to the ball, he could be a stud out of the slot. We've seen how successful he was with Desmond Ridder in Cincinnati. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. I continue to reiterate that, but I truly do mean it. Like, this is a hire that I'm not trying to sell to you guys. I'm not trying to sit up here today and say this is going to be great because X, Y, and Z. When they hired Matt Eberflus, I said this is going to be rough, because they followed that up with Luke Getsy. I said this is going to be bad. And it's like, we understood that, but now after the resurgence of this defense, after the arrival of guys like Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, and so many others, this defense is top 3, top 5. Without question. We're obviously still going to be seeing a defensive coordinator get hired, but I would imagine that Matt Eberflus is going to be the play caller for the defense going into next year. No way he's not, after what we've seen. Bringing in Shane Waldron is huge for the Chicago Bears organization. But with that being said, I appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. If you guys are new here, smack that follow button if you haven't already. You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok for daily Chicago sports news at theshy.kid. Until then, I'll check you guys out later. We will check you guys out tomorrow morning. We're going to be going live talking everything Bears, everything Cubs, everything Bulls, everything Blackhawks, WNBA free agency, et cetera, et cetera. Until next time, I'll check you guys out later. Peace.
I love you.